So hello, everybody. This is Bill Bittner from IBM. I'll be helping guide the discussion here today as we do the WebExes. And we'll get started here with the VM workshop. I'm going to turn it over to Dianne Griffin, our VM workshop chairperson for 2021.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everyone. I'm Dianne Griffin, your 2021 VM workshop chairperson. Seems like just yesterday I was greeting all of you at the 2020 VM workshop virtual event. I had hoped to be greeting you all in person this year, as the face-to-face events are great. But as we showed last year, when the VM community pulls together, it always turns out great. I'm sure there are one or two things that don't go quite as planned, but our resiliency can handle it. And the information shared and the fun we'll have will make up for the small inconveniences. It is great to see so many names from last year, as well as several new names. Thank you all for inviting us back into your world. As you can see, there are a lot of you out there, and you come from over 100 different companies from 19 countries, proving this is a worldwide event and community. As we did last year, we'll cover topics in hardware, Linux, ZVSE, ZVM, and the ecosystem. So if you've been attending the workshop for decades, or this is your first workshop, welcome. For those of you who are new to the VM workshop, it's been around since 1977. It took a hiatus, but came back revitalized in 2011 after Len Deagle and Barton Robinson of Velocity were talking and realized they and the community missed the workshop. Technology was new, but not the vision of the workshop. We have a vision of commitment to the sustainability of the platform by providing a cost-effective event that provides a place to interact, learn, and have fun in the process. Historically, the event has been in June, summer here in the US. Access to facilities at universities during their downtime helps keep the costs down. The workshop normally runs 2.5 days with multiple tracks and includes hands-on labs. Another fundamental of the workshop is that it's run by volunteers and several partnering sponsors. The workshop has strived to not become just another vendor event, but a true community organization. Web conferences probably aren't new to any of you, but a few comments on the logistics. The primary rule is stay muted if you are not presenting or asking a question. If you have trouble finding the mute button, we'll try to help. If you find yourself suddenly in the meeting lobby all alone, chances are you were off mute and our moderator creatively solved the problem. The workshop committee has always strived to help foster interaction and networking, not just between attendees and speakers, but between yourself and other attendees. That is a bigger challenge in a virtual event, but we encourage you to engage with others. A way to do that is through the WebEx chat function. Near bottom of the screen, you'll see a little voice bubble for chat. Clicking that will open a chat window or panel. Feel free to use this to ask questions during sessions or chat with others during the breaks. Moderators and other committee members will be there to help with questions. Included in WebEx are reactions. This is a fun way to give some feedback to your speakers and others, since we can't applaud or smile in person. Go ahead, feel free to try it. I know you want to. The core of the volunteers is the VM Workshop Committee, which starts planning the next event even before the previous one is complete. It has representatives from various customer shops as well as key partnering sponsors. Committee members, if you're out there, say hello in the WebEx chat. I'd like to give a special shout out to the following members for their efforts in tackling another year of switching from face-to-face to a virtual event. Thank you all. The price of the face-to-face events has been kept at $100 for early registration since the workshop was revitalized in 2011. The only reason we can do that is the generous support of our sponsors. We appreciate not only their support, but their flexibility with logistics for events affected by the pandemic. With a smaller agenda, this virtual event will not have sponsor sessions, but the sponsors do look forward to speaking to you next year. In a second, I'll show the sponsors, and I'd ask that anyone present from that group say hello in the WebEx chat. Velocity software has been at the heart of the VM workshop since the beginning and the key to the revitalized workshop. They specialize in performance management as well as systems management. Vicom Infinity is a longtime VM workshop supporter. They are also an IBM Premier Business Partner. Broadcom and its people and products have been a large part of the VM community for decades. The VSE crowd has sponsors as well, including BSI and Bernard Software Incorporated, who has supported the workshop since the inclusion of VSE. Our next set of sponsors start with IBM, and they are an active part of the workshop. Another IBM Premier Business Partner is Mainline Information Systems. They have been a faithful sponsor of the workshop and have contributed technical speakers at several events. A relatively new sponsor to the workshop, but not the community, is Optica Technologies, a leading provider of innovative mainframe virtual tape solutions for the ZVM and ZVSE market worldwide. Rounding out this chart is CSI International, which provides ZVSE solutions and also has a new ZVM product as well. Kicking off our final set of sponsors is Sine Nomine, who has been a faithful contributor to the workshop through committee members, sessions, and their sponsorship. A new sponsor for 2021 is Logon Software, which offers the Logon Wave for IBM Z to support the IBM Wave community. Welcome, Logon. Another new sponsor is Recovery Point, a leading national provider of IT secure and compliant infrastructure and business resilience services. Our final two sponsors are Enterprise Systems Media and Tech Channel, two online technical information providers who have generously run ads for the VM workshop and help get the word out. Thanks again to all our sponsors. At last year's event, after the final session, several of us hung out just to talk about the event and life. We decided to do that this year for everyone interested at the end of both days. You can come off mute, or if you want to just add comments in the chat, that is fine also. Video will be enabled as long as the bandwidth holds. We will turn off the recording for this session. As you know, when Glenn Dougal and Len Deagle start to discuss CCWs and core memory, it can get a little crazy. Speakers have been sending us their presentations, and as they do, we post them on the VM Workshop webpage. All the charts will be there by Monday. We are also recording the sessions, and those recordings will be posted on YouTube by Monday, June 21st. If you haven't seen the VM Workshop YouTube channel, check it out. You'll find the sessions from last year's event and some additional material we couldn't fit in the agenda this year. I mentioned that the presentations will be found on the VM Workshop website after the speakers provide them. There is a lot of other good information on the site, including a relatively new addition, Mike Poyle's CICS page, which is a treasure chest of goodies for those interested in ZVSE and, in particular, CICS. Many of you know the bingo game, and some have probably played meeting bingo, but this year we introduce ZVM Go. You can get a standard card at the URL listed. Or if you're more adventurous, you can download the RexExec that generates a random card, which includes other phrases. Just don't make fun of the programming techniques. Feel free to shout ZVM Go in the chat when you complete a row, column, or a diagonal. We hope you have a great experience these 2 days, and we hope you join us next year when we return to the face-to-face event. The workshop will be at Binghamton University, which is just across the river from IBM Endicott, where the bulk of CVM development works. You may recall we were at BU in 2015. Next year is also the 50th anniversary of VM, so trust there will be cake. I am also pleased to announce that next year's chairperson will be Gerard Howells from America First Credit Union. Some of you may have heard Gerard speak last year's event, and he'll be speaking today at 1:15. Thanks, Gerard. And thank you all for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions. Bill, back to you.
Thanks, Dianne. And we want to thank you, Dianne, for staying at the helm these past 2 years. For those that haven't met Dianne, she's from Marriott Corporation. She's been the chair last year and this year. She's our first female chair in the modern era. We had several back prior to 2000. First chair to have a pandemic, first chair to do 2 WebEx events back to back like this. And also Dianne's a very good leader in terms of working through these stressful situations. So she's also the first chair not to use angry words with us. So that's always a good thing. And as Dianne said, Gerard will be joining us as the 2022 chair. He happens to be our first chair with a British accent west of the Mississippi River. He's also our first chair that's as much a Linux person as they are a ZVM person. For those that want to know more about Gerard, he did a great session last year, actually 2 great sessions last year. One that was really about his journey in ZVM and Linux, and then one about specifically their environment. He's also speaking later today, as Dianne mentioned. So thanks very much, Dianne, and welcome, Gerard, and thank you in advance for the great job I know you're going to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another little bit of news. Many of you know Gonzalo Serrano. He had been with us for a number of years on the committee. He recently had a little bit of a change, so he's still going to be part of the committee. However, he swapped out his IBM badge for a 21st Century Software badge. You can see his new contact information there. He also apparently swapped out his ties for a more casual look. I'm not really sure what's up with that, but Gonzalo will be around all day. He'll actually be here for the happy hour. So if you have questions for him, and I'm sure he'll have some things to share then as well. So thank you, everybody. With this, we're going to segue into the keynote session. And today it's my privilege to introduce to you all Kara Todd, who, if you were with us last year, you got to hear Kara share about the platform and the environment. And also we brought in Marcel Mitran today. Marcel is one of my favorite people. He's done a lot of things over the years, both from a technical perspective, but also a business perspective. So I think you're going to enjoy everything that Kara and Marcel have to share with you today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kara.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Dianne. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are around the world. I know from the chat, we've got representation from around the world and many time zones. So thank you for taking the time out to join us and to continue to partner and work together to move the platform forward. Again, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. And I'm very happy that everybody continues to be able to connect virtually and look forward to meeting many of you in person. In fact, Binghamton University is near where I grew up. I actually grew up at the birthplace of IBM in Endicott. And so I'll look forward to meeting you all for a drink and some Speedies when we get together next. So as everyone's mentioned, I know there's a great agenda that we have planned, and I look forward to talking to you just a little bit more today, an update on the platform, where we're going. Bill kind of already introduced Marcel. I asked Marcel to join me here today, right, the CTO for Z and Linux One, and he's really very involved with me in all aspects of driving the Linux business, including the hybrid cloud strategy, and he'll be sharing some stories and use cases in areas where we're seeing a lot of momentum and where ZVM is a critical foundational part of that story. So we will take a few questions at the end, looking at the time. I know I'll give you guys all a bingo square here. Depending on where we end up, I might just stick around in the chat or feel free at our contact info here to reach out directly. So with that, Bill, if you want to go to the next page for me. So a lot has changed, right, in the last 10 years. You know, we've talked a lot about digital transformation. We look at smartphones and tablets. I mean, my almost 12-year-old insists he's the only one in middle school now, right, without a phone. And so things continue to change. Cloud, AI, as we look forward, we continue to evolve the platform for the ever-evolving needs of our clients. And within that same 10 years, the Z capacity, Z in Linux 1, has grown by 3.5 times. So, and that growth curve again includes ZVM, ZVSE, and Linux. They're all represented. The Linux IFLs within the dark blue specialty MIPS in that graph. And, you know, really this momentum just continues to grow year over year. And, you know, 91 of the top 100 IBM Z enterprises are running Linux, and almost 60% of Z clinics, clients rather, are running Linux as well. So, you know, Z continues to power, right, the global economy and our top businesses, billions of transactions per day across many industries. And more are looking to add Linux to that environment and integrate the Z system of record into their hybrid cloud story. And ZVM is an essential part of that strategy for hybrid cloud. So again, thank you for being here today. All of you are essential in making sure that we partner to deliver the right content continuously so we can keep this growth curve going. So if we go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to just share, I won't go obviously through everything on here, but many of you may have seen last year we celebrated 20 years of Linux on Z, 5 years since the introduction of Linux 1, and a year since bringing OpenShift to the platform, where we led with OCP running on ZVM. So really, I mean, this just shows we're really committed to evolving and growing the platform. The drumbeat has not slowed down over time. If anything, it continues to increase. We're really focused on delivering value across the entire stack, including the virtualization layer. I know you'll be hearing about more enhancements across the portfolio these couple of days with our distro partners, and continuing putting new offers into the market. So you can find more of this in the IBM newsroom. Many of you hopefully have already seen this. There was a lot of interesting content. And you can even see on the bottom here that IFL growth is within the dark blue that you see on the page prior. So we continue to expand and evolve, right, Linux on the platform, and be committed to open technologies. So we've put out a lot, but I wanted to highlight just a couple things, right, in terms of continuing that drumbeat, right? These are even since that anniversary slide, right? In May last month, we GA'd a new offering called the Linux 1.3 Express, which really focuses on simplicity and speed to market at a price point, right, that we are seeing demanded for getting started with Linux on the platform. So it's received very positive analyst feedback. We're having a lot of good conversations with getting new clients on the platform. And so we're looking to drive even more momentum and growth with this offering, as well as OpenShift. So, you know, we brought OpenShift to the platform at the end of 2019, and we've been continuously delivering more and more content and add-ons in partnership with Red Hat. And we've also have a new program starting this quarter for new deals for something we call try and buy, of really showing the value before clients invest. And this solution, right, includes activating existing cores as well as the memory you need, OpenShift, CIC at the IaaS layer, and ZVM. So all of what you would need to really try it out and test it and go into POC, and then eventually move into production. And we'll talk a little bit later about the number of POCs, the interest we're having, and then Marcel will talk about a few specific examples as time allows here. So I won't go into this in a lot of detail, but really as organizations are continuing their journey to cloud, we're reinforcing that the new normal is hybrid and open. Most organizations have multiple clouds, and almost all of them have public and private cloud environments. So it's essential that IBM Z is part of that hybrid cloud story, and we are heavily investing in this space, right? So Z can be fully integrated into your hybrid cloud infrastructure. And when Z is integrated into that infrastructure, right, we remain committed to the security, reliability, scalability that are required for mission critical workloads in that cloud. We remain committed to being the premier data serving and transaction processing platform, and that optimization continues across the stack, including virtualization. And this is what I finally refer to as the cake chart. Really, the hybrid cloud architecture, when you hear that referenced, is comprehensive. It's an inclusive approach to cloud deployment. It's us partnering with OpenShift built right as the core of that strategy, giving flexibility and choice for our clients as they're figuring out how to move forward into cloud, right, and have that multiple clouds and private and public. So this really gives that choice from everything from the containerized verified software, the cloud packs, includes services from IBM garages, right? GBS is very engaged in really figuring out how to leverage, right, your system of record and leverage Z for differentiation within the hybrid cloud implementation. So this chart, right, we really is just showing that globally across many industries, we have a huge amount of interest in clients looking at containerization, looking at OpenShift on Z. We have upwards of 47 active pilots that are working on being planned, 34 that are farther along, and we now have 5 clients that have moved into production, with hundreds more that we're talking to that are interested, that are working with our acceleration team to figure out how to get up and running and how to best apply this to their businesses. And so with that, I would like to hand it over to Marcel to talk to you all a little bit about why OpenShift on Z and a few specific use cases that hopefully will resonate across some of your businesses, right? And these use cases will kind of span both hybrid cloud and data serving success stories, all underpinned by ZVM, which is foundational to these strategic solutions and the growth that we're seeing. So, you know, we have OpenShift support now on ZVM and KVM. We continue to see a high amount of interest in leveraging ZVM. And Marcel will talk a little bit more about why and the value that Z is bringing with OpenShift. So we go to the next slide, and then I will turn it over to Marcel.
Right, thanks, Kara. Right, so as Kara mentioned, when we think about OpenShift and Cloud Paks on Z and why all these customers are so excited, and we're seeing such great momentum, and we are truly seeing tremendous momentum for this product. It really comes back to, or gets back to, the core competencies of the platform. You know, being at the center of the data landscape in the enterprise, being the system of record that drives that drives large data serving and transaction processing. Being, of course, a scalable and highly available and resilient platform, and of course all the security and compliance, right? All of those differentiated benefits or value propositions of the platform, as true as they are in the existing data center or the existing IT landscape at the enterprise, they're equally true when you want to move to a containerized world, a cloud native world, a hybrid cloud world. That value proposition doesn't go away. It doesn't change because you change the way you're consuming IT and consuming and deploying applications. Those needs, those differentiated values continue to be equally true. And so as customers embark on these cloud native or cloud first strategies, what they're realizing is, as much as you need that cloud native consumption model for your digital channels, right, the stuff that builds on top of Z or Linux One, you also need it in the core system of record for those transactional workloads. Otherwise, you really have a broken strategy, right? The strategy falls apart when you don't have a comprehensive, holistic, end-to-end story across everything from the public cloud and the digital channels that sit around your Z box to the actual workload that feeds all of those surrounding workloads, and off the Z or off Linux One. so we've seen a few really what I consider adoption patterns or value propositions that have really resonated and driven adoption. And the first one I like to call cloud in a box. And this is all about the ability to truly scale within the context of a single footprint. I mean, we've seen, we've put up to 2.4 million containers on a single box, right? The ability to scale out and scale up all within a single footprint. And you marry that to a cloud consumption model that's ubiquitous, that's standard, and you now have something that's very unique and very powerful, right? You have this ability to consume that scalable, elastic environment that sits on Z in a manner that's very natural and very ubiquitous, and keeps infrastructure simple, keeps it highly efficient, right? Power and physical footprint are wonderfully compact and dense. You have this high availability, and you have the high performance, and so that's one of the adoption patterns that's really resonating. The other one is about digital transformation and modernization, where if clients have an existing large investment in Z for their system of record, typically that's going to be on ZOS or maybe on TPS, on VSE, and they want to modernize, they want to extend on that existing investment, but do so with a cloud native consumption model. And so the ability to put that new workload, that new business logic in a containerized environment that sits on the same physical infrastructure to where the traditional workload sits or the system of record sits, right? And leverage the fact that you now have data co-location, you have low latency communication, highly available, highly secure communication between the existing workload and the new workload. Well, that's a differentiated value proposition that enables modernization in a way that's less risky, more incremental in nature, and gives you a faster return on investment. And that's a very common pattern with a lot of the customers that are looking at OpenShift and Cloud Paks today. And then last but not least, it's all about saving dollars, right? The fact that you have this infrastructure that's lower cost, lower power, lower footprint, and that you can actually consolidate software quite effectively and run at high utilization means you can save dollars. And as much as that's equally true traditionally in the data serving space with workloads like Oracle, well, it's also true for containerized workloads and equally true for containerized workloads. And so, the cost of running these cloud native workloads is actually significantly reduced when you can run them on a smaller physical footprint on less cores. And that's actually translated in some very, very, very nice savings for customers as well. Okay, let's go to the next chart and look at some examples. So this is a large financial services company in North America, and they actually were on a cloud native strategy. So they had standardized on OpenShift as an enterprise. They had done so well before the acquisition of Red Hat by IBM, and so they had obviously an existing investment in ZOS for their transactional workloads and for their batch workloads. Business logic written in COBOL, and they wanted to extend that business logic, that COBOL business logic, with new business logic written in Golang, written in Java, and they wanted it to be containerized, running on OpenShift. Right, their strategy was everything cloud native moving forward, and so this was prior to the acquisition, so there was no OpenShift on Z at the time. So they tried to do this on Intel, right? They wrote new business logic in Java and Go. They put it on their Intel private cloud running OpenShift, and then they had the COBOL code from their batch workloads calling out to this new, these new services, these new cloud services on Intel, containerized on Intel. And what they realized very quickly was the cost of going between that COBOL code and the new code on the Intel infrastructure, it was very high. They were spending a lot of time moving over the network back and forth between the existing COBOL code and the new code, and to the point that their batch workloads would take an order of magnitude longer to complete because of this added cost of moving back and forth. And that was untenable. It was not. There was no way to that. That was just not pragmatic for them to do. You can't take an existing batch workload and make it 10 times longer to complete and declare success. Right? It was a failure. Now, once OpenShift became available on ZVM, they came back to this proof of concept very quickly. They said, "Oh, this is very exciting, right? Now we can put this new business logic on ZVM on the same infrastructure where the COBOL code is on ZOS, and we can use hypersockets, right? And really accelerate the communication channel between these two worlds." And lo and behold, they brought down. They were able to successfully meet their SLAs and their batch work windows because of that advantage, right? And so that it was tremendous success to be able to leverage ZVM and OpenShift on ZVM co-located with the existing system of record on ZOS. So it's a great example of how there's a differentiated value proposition that solved a very real business problem for this client, and now they're off to the races and having tremendous success and looking at tons of different workloads that they can bring to the platform running on OCP on ZVM because of it. And so this is another example. This is a credit bureau in Latin America, and in their case, they had existing WebSphere workload running on Intel, and it was on OpenShift on Intel, and they did a proof of concept where they said, what if we took that WebSphere Liberty workload and just moved it to Z? Like, what happened? What would happen if we did that? I think they just weren't very happy with the throughput they were seeing from the environment as it was, and thought that there's got to be an advantage to data co-location. And they saw tremendous performance improvements by just moving the existing OpenShift workload from their Intel infrastructure to running on ZVM co-located with their ZOS environment. They went from 1,500 queries per minute to 650,000 queries per minute. I mean, that's huge. It says 43x here, but I think if you did the math, it's actually like 430x. But anyways, it's just a huge improvement in performance for them, largely by leveraging the fact that they're able to co-locate the environment on the same infrastructure and leverage the co-location. Now, one thing that I do need to point out is there's advantages beyond the improved SLAs. There's other great advantages to this. If you're an application developer, what this means when you're able to bring down the cost of data movement or of moving between these two worlds, what that means is you can be much more incremental in the way you're extending the business logic as you move forward with the ZVM environment. Because you don't have to build large swaths of new business logic to sort of overcome the cost of moving between these two worlds, right? One way of dealing with the overhead of the latency is to just say, hey, we'll just try and minimize the trips we have to take back and forth. But if you minimize the trips you take back and forth, the only way you can do that is to move much larger chunks of business logic or create much larger chunks of business logic in the new world, right? So that you can encapsulate more of the data processing or the transaction processing, and then you can minimize having to go back and forth. But when you have to do that, the problem you create is you have to do. You're no longer in an agile world. You're forcing developers to do is to make big leaps and bounds in trying to build new things, and developers don't like to do big leaps and bounds. They like to do things at a very incremental, small steps, because small steps mean that they can test and they can validate much more regularly, and they can make sure that they're not making mistakes and that they're being successful. And they like that, right? They like to be able to be much more incremental, much more agile in their behavior. And so the outcome is that when you think about a modernization strategy, the ability to take those smaller steps really translates into lower risk, lower time to value, right? You can see a return on investment much more quickly. You can be sure that the effect that you're having is a successful effect much more quickly. So you're lowering risk, you're lowering cost, you're improving the time to value quite significantly. And so it's not only about the SLAs and about the batch window, it's also about giving developers a better experience and a better agile environment to work with in these modernization projects. And we all, if any of you have ever worked through these modernization projects, risk is the biggest inhibitor, and time return on investment are the biggest inhibitors to success to many of these projects. And so this is a great way of improving on that. All right, let's go to the next chart. So this is a client that was looking actually to modernize off of COBOL and go to Java. Their initial intent was to take those applications and take them to AWS. What they quickly found out was that Amazon Web Services are not cheap, it's expensive, and the performance was far from great. And so we came in and said, hey, how about you try OpenShift on Z for that experience, right? They left the data on ZOS, by the way, but they just moved the business logic in this case. And they saw a 3x improvement in performance and a significant lower cost to run the same workload on OpenShift on Z versus on Intel. So another great example of the advantage of ZVM. This is a cloud in a box example. This is a client that has thousands and thousands of Intel cores, so tremendous sprawl in their data center. They're challenged by data center footprint and data center power. They don't know where to put these new Intel servers. And what they're seeing is a tremendous opportunity to take a lot of that existing Intel workload and consolidate it down on Linux One. And they're using ZVM and IBM Cloud Infrastructure Center to provide an automation layer to automatically provision and manage the underlying ZVM infrastructure, right? They're going from essentially a private cloud on Intel to a private cloud on Linux One. And leveraging the fact that they can consolidate effectively and gain significant improvement in efficiencies in how the infrastructure runs, but also in how the software runs on top of this world. And we've seen customers, see consolidation ratios in the order of 20 to 1 in some of these. So it's a really great example of how this client is leveraging OpenShift as well as just traditional virtualized environments on top of ZVM. They're doing both. Right, they're taking advantage of this transition to both modernize existing workloads that are on Intel to containerized workloads running on Linux One, and in situations where the workload warrants staying virtualized, they're leaving it virtualized, running on ZVM as well. So a nice example of a cloud in a box experience. All right, so this is just to get a sense of the savings, right? The advantages from an economic perspective of that consolidation story. This is an example of an OpenShift-enabled Java workload using a DB2 data store. What we did is it's a core banking environment written in Java with a DB2 database. And what we did here is we really wanted to emphasize or demonstrate the true end-to-end story. So what we did is we not only wanted to show the production environment, we wanted to make sure we brought in HA, brought in dev test, right, and showed the end-to-end story of the infrastructure required and the cost, the respective cost to run this workload on a cluster of Intel systems versus a Linux One environment, okay? And so to run this workload at the SLA level that was required on Intel, we needed 176 cores across production, HA, dev test, okay? To run the same workload with the same qualities, like the same SLAs, to provide the same dev test and HA and production environment, we needed only 17 IFLs on Linux One. And so that translates into, an order of magnitude in savings from a core perspective or a core to IFL perspective. How we could do this? Well, one, we ran, of course, at higher utilization on Linux One, but we also, just out of the box, Linux One is, gave us a 4x improvement in performance So there's a 4x improvement, just raw throughput, better throughput per core. You add in the better, the better utilization, and that's how you get to the 10x reduction in IFLs. Now that translates into a whole bunch of savings from a software perspective. The software stack is the most expensive part in this picture, ultimately. And the fact that we need way less cores and the software's price per core, guess what? It's way cheaper. Now, of course, there's savings from a hardware perspective and so on and so forth. So we're looking at like a 34% lower total cost of ownership. When you get past the cost of the hardware, you're now looking at a 75% savings in operational expense to run the same workload. So very good story about how Linux One and ZVM are helping to improve not only the quality of the workload, the resilience of the workload, but also bringing down the cost of the workload quite nicely. So beyond cloud native workloads, I mean, data serving workloads continue to be a really great fit for Z and ZVM. And so this is a piece of work that Marriott did a few years ago. They won a big innovation award from MongoDB. This is Mongo's event that they won this award at. For demonstrating how the value proposition of Z and ZVM really differentiate and bring value to Mongo, right? They were able to show how Mongo just scales wonderfully better running on Linux on Z compared to running on Intel infrastructure. And that was a really great story for the resilience of the platform, for the engineering that goes into how our I/O works and how the single thread processing is faster and how the caches are bigger, right? All of that adds up to a much more scalable, resilient system, and that's as true as it is in the traditional data serving workloads. It's also very true in the new modern NoSQL data serving workloads, and Mongo is a great example of this, and Marriott did a great job of trying this and seeing the value of it quite nicely. Another great example of the strength of the platform is NowieStyle. This is a European client who essentially do furniture fabrication. So they build and sell furniture. And they leverage they have IT infrastructure that manages their supply chain and manages their inventory, right? And their ability to move quickly, their business they need to be able to sense and build reports, to see where they are, where the pipeline is, how well they're selling versus how, their suppliers producing the materials and delivering the materials, right? They need to be able to keep track and understand how their business is doing and how their supply chain is behaving and how their sales are behaving. They need to keep track of all of that, right, to keep their businesses up and running and keep them running efficiently. And so they depend heavily on their IT infrastructure to do that for them. And their ability to generate these reports efficiently and timely has a direct impact on their business. And so they are an Oracle DB shop with an app layer, an ERP layer that is a Java-based ERP layer. They moved from an Intel-based solution to a Linux One-based solution here. And they saw tremendous improvements, not only in savings, right? They saved a lot of money on their IT infrastructure by doing this, but they also were able to improve on the performance. They were able to drive those reports that help them measure and sense their business, right? And affect their business. They're able to do that in a much more efficient and timely fashion, which had an immediate and return on investment for them from a business perspective. They're able to manage their supply chain more efficiently. They're able to manage their inventory more efficiently and manage their sales more efficiently as a result. And so a great story for how Linux One not only saved them money, but also helped them improve their business as a result of that improved performance. And that's it for me, and I'll pass it back to Kara here to close off.
Thanks, Marcel. And IBM Z and Linux One really bring a lot of unique capabilities to the market. I think everybody here knows, right? IBM Z really is an acknowledged leader in security, beyond 7 nines of availability, right? Making sure that we're providing the resiliency that businesses need, and then the performance and scalability, right, to grow your business. So Really, we're invested in Marcel and a lot of the use cases, right? And integrating Z and the system of record into the client's hybrid multi-cloud. And ZVM is a critical component of that hybrid cloud strategy. I guess I'll look to Bill also. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend this workshop and partner together again. And I know we're a couple minutes over time. If Bill allows, right, we can take a couple of questions. Otherwise, we will look in the chat to see if there's anything, or again, feel free to contact either Marcel or I directly.
So with that, thank you very much, Dianne, Kara, and Marcel.